So with no further ado, I'm going to invite one of my favorite people in the world, Brink, to join us. We've already been chatting this morning, so if nothing else, I got a chance already to catch up with Greg. And Greg, give us kind of that, we've got a little bit of time, but give us that overview of your interesting background and what you're doing right now.
Yeah, thanks, Kathryn, and vice versa. You're one of my favorite, if not my favorite person in the industry. So thank you for the invite. And I'm delighted to talk about this topic. It's interesting. 3 years ago, the subject was connecting the dots, or the theme of this whole summit was connecting the dots, and AI was our topic, if you remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting. We actually agreed after that conversation not to talk about AI for a while, but here we are. But you asked me specifically about my background. Yeah, I've had a lot of experience in automotive. Even my grandfather owned dealerships in Ohio, so I've got got kind of that in my bloodline. But even, I've worked at most levels of automotive. I worked for the OEM. I've worked in telematics for companies like Motorola and General Motors. I've worked in startups, invested in a startup, and that was acquired by the company I'm with now, which is the nameplate you see on the slide, Eccentric. And we do real complex vehicle configurators, visualizations around the vehicles that some of you may know these on like the big OEM sites, where you can build the vehicle, you can price the vehicle, you can add options, you can make it interactive, honk horns, turn lights on, and that type of thing. That's our tech. We've morphed into more AI layering on top of that, the vehicle configurator space. And so, I'm excited to talk to you, Kathryn, about this. I didn't think we would revisit this so soon, but here we are.
And here we are so fast, like you said, but also at such a high speed of what's going on. Yeah.
So,
But when we talked about the connecting the dots, we were kind of prescient about how the not connecting the dots would have continued blind spots.
right.
And so that's kind of what we're calling it now, right? But it's basically that same situation where we really need to think about how we're going to use what we're calling business intelligence, because it's not just AI. It's not. It's,
Yeah.
how do you use it and who do you use it with how? So there's hidden data. And if anybody's been reading stuff, and of course, all of us in the software world have, then they talk about, well, SaaS software as a service is going to go away because AI is going to be able to write that instantly just by somebody telling him what to do. And of course, that's not true. But what is true is that data is the important foundation of the future. So let's kind of jump in. I thought it was, we talked about this a few years ago, but it's really that last 5 years that kind of started rewriting everything, right?
Yeah.
There were so many things that happened, everything from supply chain, shortages, everything about pricing going up and down, vehicles being missing. Like I know when we launched Convoy in 2019, we had 250,000 vehicles on it, and by the early 21, there were 40,000. Right, all the things that were happening, and of course now we've got rolling into what's happening, tariffs, and not just data privacy, but how we communicate what's happening to people in the automotive industry. There's so much around visibility and transparency. Right.
Yeah. Again, while all this disruption was happening, what was happening in the background is the telematics were still operating. AI and some predictive modeling was still being absorbed, and data was not going anywhere. And it was the companies that captured that data and started using it to their advantage that got out ahead. We learned a lot during that time. We saw what used to be a 60-day, 90-day order cycle turn into 18 months. And we saw, used vehicle values went haywire as a result. Interest rates shot up. I mean, my gosh. But the good thing out of that is we captured all that, or most companies capture that data and use that data now to, I guess, it's funny, we were just talking about predicting the future. And so I think what seemed like a disruption actually accelerated the pace of implementing a lot of these models into our everyday life. So, Kathryn, this is one that, yeah, go for it.
And in one of the key ones that were visible to everybody, because a lot of this stuff, like you said, Greg, is happening in the background, right? But one that I thought that we agreed on that was really different was May 14th, 2024, which was almost 2 years ago, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, search engines changed, and Google started handing us the information instead of our being in charge of searching and then looking and picking through. And it's a little bit scary to me. One of the things that I read about was how this actually is changing the way that people's brains work, and how, like we all know that if you use it or lose it, right? That's one of the famous statements for sports, and I think for brain use too. So what does this mean? Does this mean that we're now going to have everything handed to us and we'll just take it the way it's fed to us or not? I think that will have to be a discussion that is a whole separate time, because I know we're limited. We got to move fast because we got a lot of things to cover here.
Yeah.
We were talking about how fragmented the data is, right? So maybe people are collecting it. The OEMs are collecting things. The upfitters are collecting data, the dealers and the fleets, but they're really not connecting. OEMs aren't connecting their data to the upfitter system, and the upfitters aren't connecting to aren't sharing actually anything. And it's not just because they don't want to, it's because of all the company types, I guess, they are the farthest behind with technology. Dealers missing how to sync with fleets, but they really, really want to be able to do that so that they can provide more services. And telematics is very data rich, but it's really disconnected from everything else that's happening in the world of fleets. I just came last week. I was at NAFA, the North America Fleet Association, and they were talking a lot about how piles of data that are not connected.
Yeah. Yeah, and we put a number on this. This isn't made up by you and I. This is coming out of a pretty robust study done by, I think, McKinsey, in their fleet analytics platform. But it's the friction. It's what it's what you said. It's not connecting the data and the sources of those data, whether it's the CRM, and the DMS, and then not talking to the allocation from the OEMs. All this being said, this is big picture stuff, but what I always talk to dealers about is when you think about your daily workload, whether you're in sales or in the parts department, think about those tasks that can be done, that are mundane, that take a long time, that are inefficient, and don't be scared of some of this stuff. Don't be scared to go into, and of course your company needs to approve this, but go into some of these models and look for these efficiencies, because we can give you some examples at the end if we have time, but some of the most mundane tasks, whether it's responding to an email or actually running all your upfitter configuration data from an invoice into to replicate a vehicle that you can sell somebody else, that all can be done in minutes, where it used to take days or spreadsheets. Absolutely. And all that other stuff. So anyway, I don't want to get on a tangent, but
this is what we're talking about, though. I mean, it really is the crux of it. It's there's data that, like you mentioned, in the CRM and around the demand component of what's going on in the market.
Yep.
That we're looking at connecting so that proper planning can be done to meet market needs. There's, that whole, you touched briefly on it, that whole where the OEM is planning stuff and how it's flowing through. Even to today, it's a year. It's really sad, that and that that whole fleet operations of how they get through they have pockets of it, but there's nothing sitting on top that actually looks at it and says, well, here's some of this and some of this and some of that. And that means, right,
Yeah.
that you could save time, that you could do more. And so that's the other side of the AI opportunity. I think it's there's the complexity of the data, right? A human brain can't really easily, or like you said, in a short period of time, look at all the different data and pull out. They can look at the results and decide what's important. That's the part that, isn't going to change. What's relevant, what is, the context of what your goals are. And, but this is, when we talk about blind spots, we always talk about opportunity too. Right, Greg?
Yeah, I mean, Ford Pro just rolled out or announced a program called Ford Pro AI last week, and they are connecting all the data. And I imagine other OEMs are doing the same thing, but they're looking at predictive maintenance, route optimizations, seatbelt usage, and that's for their fleet customers, right? So it's sitting in the dashboards, and it needs to get adoption for people to look at it. And the ones that do and take advantage of those types of platforms are going to be out ahead and not only save time but save money.
Absolutely. Okay, why is that going? I'm going to let you talk about this. You did the work.
Yeah, again, this isn't made up data. This is coming out of ATBS, DAT, very robust. Again, this is the McKinsey Fleet Analytics data that we referenced earlier. And the headline of this is 3.2x median ROI within 18 months. That's not 18 months to break even. That's 18 months to 3x your investment. So for context, that outperforms most capital equipment purchases in this industry. On the cost side of this, where a big opportunity is that's, if you make an assumption of a 100-truck fleet, that's $2.1 million in average annual savings for that fleet. So for a fleet size running $1.50 to $2 per mile all in, that 19% reduction in cost per mile translates to somewhere between $3 million and $5 million in annual operating cost saves. The 19% figure comes specifically from fleets that are using integrated business intelligence, not just telematics, what we knew 5 years ago in isolation, but those telematics and the data that underlies that, connected to maintenance scheduling, driver behavior scoring, route optimization, similar to what I just described one OEM is doing or announced last week in trying to consolidate this information to help optimize these fleets. They see this opportunity as massive. On the dealer side of things, Kathryn, the 27% faster inventory turn figures, it's probably the most commercially significant number on this slide, honestly. If you're sitting on $5 million worth of inventory, turning it 27% faster is the difference between a 45-day and 32-day average days to sale. In the dealer world, that's massive. Whether it's on, whatever side of the house you're on, that's a huge capital improvement without changing a single unit's pricing. That's just inventory turn, right?
And
So
of course, in the commercial space, the average cost of the vehicle is higher and the average days to turn is higher.
that's right. That's right. Yeah.
So
So
that kind of impact would be even greater, I think.
correct. These are real numbers as long as you're using the data in this form or fashion.
Right. Yeah. I think that, this kind of helps put that even more crisply, right? And adoption. Yesterday, I did talk about. I shared some data from Escalante, who's our co-sponsor for the CVB Summit. They're a research and data company out of Detroit area, and they have a fairly large group of fleets that they do ongoing conversation with, which is great because it's not just a one and done. let's go along for the ride and see what's working, right? And so they were kind of close. They had close to a 50%. Um, but the wording was a little different. It was believing that AI is helpful. It didn't break it completely into adoption. And you and I talked about the fact that um, there's a lot of adoption that happens that people don't even know it's AI, number one. And number two, adoption can happen at so many different levels in the company for so many different reasons, all the way from that simple, like you kicked us off with, that there's a simple tool that's going to help Greg or Kathryn or the data department or the development department to be more efficient, to be more quality focused, and to be actually happier, because let's all agree, I think we can agree with this, nobody likes the repetitive stuff, the pick it all up every time or take the garbage out, or all of that stuff. It's like, let's take people that have been in the space, that understand what's going on, and let them help with their experience, as opposed to having to do these menial tasks, right?
Yeah.
So it's all the way from that end, all the way up to what we were just talking about, which is when you start getting into silos of, 5, 6 different types of data, and you somehow want to start pulling out patterns that combine it to be able to see those patterns so that you can either, prescriptively make decisions, or even use projective, projections and recommendations to review. It how do you even take a percentage,
Yeah.
right?
I think we have to recognize that we have cognitive restraints and or constraints. And
100. It's 100. I don't know if you knew that,
no.
but the brain can only have about 100 items that it's kind of cognitively aware of.
Yeah. I had a professor once told me in school, the human brain can only pay attention for 28 minutes max. So he would actually shut down the lecture at 28 minutes because he knew we wouldn't be paying attention.
Well,
Yeah.
either that was actually data informed, or he wanted to go
He just wanted to go home. Yeah.
early.
Probably the latter. Yeah. Fair enough.
Manipulation happens from data. That's right.
But we see this in, I play chess online, and the world champion chess player Magnus Carlsen would get beat by a Siri on your Apple phone within 3 minutes. So we have to even they recognize that the capacity to perform at a high level exponentially gets greater once you apply some of these, what you just called kind of that network of connecting that data. And again, I'll go back to not to be scared of it.
Right.
There's definitely scary elements of it, but on a day-to-day usage, whether your company allows you to use Microsoft Copilot or Claude or whatever the company policy is,
With
jump in,
Gemini.
use your own verbatims, use your own personality to put in the prompts. You don't need to be a prompt engineer, and just tell it to write an email for you, and just be wowed and amazed on what it can do. And then start layering on other things that are happening around you that could influence how you go about your workday. Those little micro moments in AI add up exponentially.
I'm going to add some personalized comments to that. Number one, um, tell the AI to write an email like Mark Twain would. Mark Twain's comment, my favorite.
Oh, yeah. You're back.
I'm sorry I wrote such a long letter. I didn't have time to write a shorter one.
Yeah.
And don't get rid of your personality, because authenticity. So this whole time we're talking about all this stuff that's happening faster and faster. But I'll tell you that it's a path to give you the support and the tools, but it's not the path to success. The
Yeah.
path to success is truly being authentic, and genuine, and you cannot let go of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah, these numbers add up very quickly. And for someone that's managed hundreds of employees in their life in their career, I can tell you the employees that came to me that had some level of operational efficiency on their performance review, or obviously some opportunity with growth and revenue, were the ones that always I gave a top rating to. And AI gives every employee at every level that opportunity to shine. And again,
Oh, interesting. That is a really interesting way of looking at it. It's almost like the democratization of technology for the masses who, if they take the time, you do have to take the time to feel comfortable. But you're right, it's not that difficult. It's not like you have to go to school to learn how to code.
right.
It's not like you have to, even be really hot and comfortable with the computer.
Right.
There's a lot of things that you can do just by talking, right?
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, you can talk into these things now. And in fact, I saw Tesla just released Grok into their vehicles. Now you can talk to Grok in the vehicle and it'll give you answers about features in the vehicle or anything else you want to know. So yes, you don't need to even know how to type. Uh, that's how easy this stuff is.
Mhm.
Just don't be scared of it.
Although I did read about uh, the agentic muse and the okay, we won't get into. There's so many things going on. I read a lot of science fiction when I was younger.
Yeah.
So we won't go off on that. Greg and I usually do. We'll take the conversation and then just go crazy and talk about it. But I think that, there is nothing wrong with being thoughtful and cautious because on how the tools are being used.
Yeah.
I do think that that is important. And yeah, so I think that now tell me a little bit about Eccentric. Are you guys how are you guys using give me some examples of the things that we talked about that where you guys are using AI.
Yeah. So we're doing everything from taking OEM assets, and that includes just the jelly bean images that the OEMs are providing in their ad planners and producing.
Wait a minute. Explain to the audience what a jelly bean is.
Jelly bean is basically what the OEM creates to represent a vehicle factually, meaning they take the build data out of the factory and then create a static image of a vehicle, and that could be 5 different angles of the vehicle, 20 different angles of the exterior, interior, and then they produce that out for their dealers to take advantage of to run ads or represent their vehicle
So
merchandising.
it's a modern, what was it that they used to call that white picture of or that picture that was, there was a term for, I forget what that is.
Yeah. So
But replaces that.
we're taking those assets and we can produce 3-minute running footage where you don't have to send a production team out in the Moab desert to take and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. You can do it for hundreds of dollars in less than 3 minutes and produce that same level of quality video in AI right now. Now, the trick here is what Eccentric figured out is you have to make sure this thing is OEM compliant. You have to make sure it's secure and that the governance of the OEM tracks that input all the way to output. You do not want this vehicle data to end up into the frontier models out in the ecosphere, right? You don't want competitors to know your build data. And so building an encrypted and building a closed system from input to output, that is the real key. Now, I'm hypocritical because I said, don't be scared of it. But if you're at an OEM and you're listening to this call, be scared of it. You do not want that vehicle data out into the frontier models like Nano Banana, Meta, Adobe Firefly, or Midjourney. They just will repurpose that and do whatever with that
Any way they want. That's
any way
right.
they want.
Yep.
So when you're working with these models and you're specific to, spec data and build data and factory engineered data, you want to make sure that's protected. But that's how Eccentric is using it to visualize vehicles at a very low cost perspective. And that goes, even Convoy, Kathryn, when you look at the vehicle merchandising and the inventory, some of those images are AI generated. They look photorealistic, but they're generated out of a system like ours
Mhm.
to save money. You don't have to go photograph the vehicle. You don't have to worry about the weather when you're photographing. You can do this, and we can spin up your whole convoy inventory site in a matter of hours.
The big challenge, of course, is having the build data for the upfits.
Well, we talk about that,
I know.
but
We talk about it.
AI has made the complex very, I'll put this in quotes, but it simplified that process. So, for instance, and I shouldn't be telling this, but I took a dealer invoice. They gave it to me to do this, and it had no visualizations on it. It had just the 10 different upfitter information on the invoice. I put it in the free version of ChatGPT, and it built the visualization of the vehicle almost to the spec that
I think the word there
it's
is
usable.
almost. And when people, so this is a good probably last thing to think about, because when you use the word spec,
Yep.
right? That's a tricky space because
I use the word usable.
usable. Well, okay, so like, is it a 8-foot body or a 10-foot body? Is it there's a lot of things about the spec and the commercial space that are really critical to how a company, what their use case is
Yeah.
and what they need. So, for example, if it's a 10-foot body, it's not going to fit in their parking area.
Right.
That's just a overly simple version.
Yeah.
And I do know, I when I was doing some research, and maybe it's all changed now, but I hear it's not, that you should tell your AI not to lie to you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
You
it.
know,
That's an excellent point. And I also think you need to stay within, I think you need disclaimers on everything. And they exist now. The vehicle that you're seeing is not necessarily, even when you take a photo, if you have a salesperson go out on the lot and take a photo, and it's got they're missing the scratches that were on the vehicle. That's not representing that vehicle the way the customer will end up buying it. You actually border on truth in advertising laws at that point.
yeah,
And
having just come last week from CAR, which is the
Yep.
Conference of Automotive Remarketing,
Yep.
and how to do appropriate inspections.
There you go.
Not just inspections for selling a vehicle, but inspections in real time or semi real time that help a fleet manage their appearance in the market when their drivers are driving around, if it's got scratches or bangs or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
well, I see that we're like down to the last few seconds, which we
That went
are
fine.
always able to do easily. I really appreciate Greg. I really appreciate your coming, and I really appreciate you. And I know that we're going to have a great rest. Oh, wait, is that 2 minutes? I'll see you.
Minutes. Yeah.
We have 2 minutes. Okay.
Yeah.
What do you think? What's your wrap up for this?
Well, again, I'll say it again. If you're listening to this presentation and you haven't used any of the AI platforms, go ahead and use it and just give it a try. Pop open ChatGPT or Grok or Gemini. You're probably using it, like Kathryn said, in the search queries, but go ahead and use it and just start in your own personality. Just start putting in phrases and prompts. And like Kathryn mentioned, use something simple like write up an email to Kathryn that
Or
thanks.
do a report on something.
Well, yeah, you don't even need to be that complex, but
No, but I think that when we look at ways that might intrigue someone about how it could help them,
yeah.
take something that you hate doing, like writing a report. Emails aren't so bad.
Yeah.
And just fiddle around with that, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. If there's something mundane in your workday, use it. If you're, somebody that is using it, start learning new use cases for it. That could be building reports. That could be actually attaching a spreadsheet and say, read me the spreadsheet and talk to me about, give me the pain points of fleet aging and fuel cost when diesel costs are above $3.50 a gallon, or just start doing some analysis work. Get a little more complicated. These things are, I mean, Kathryn, I know you've been using them, and it's amazing the outputs and the analysis these things can do beyond human comprehension. And again, don't be scared.
Don't be scared. I like that. We only improve by moving forward and keeping our eyes open and learning. And so I agree. In life, don't be scared.
Correct.
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks,
All
Kathryn.
righty.
Thanks, everyone.
We're going to say goodbye. I'm going to pass it off. Next is Jim Press and his lively band of dealers. They're going to keep you on the edge of your seat.
Beautiful. Thank you.